Well, I want to welcome Aneela and Ellen to the show. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is a great topic because this is a topic that I really haven't written about, I haven't talked about, and partly it's because I pick. And so I really need somebody who has a little bit more experience to come on and talk about this with everybody. And you guys are perfect because I feel like you are incredibly knowledgeable, both with your own experience and just with the community. So I think it'd be good to just start with what is a BFRB, because most of the parents listening to this probably have never heard that acronym. They probably don't even know what that is. We're talking about picking and pulling, but I wonder if you can explain what it means in general.
Yeah, and sure. Why don't I start with that? So BFRB, it stands for Body Focused Repetitive Behaviors. And for the parents out there, this is the most common disorder that you'll never hear about. And the way I like to define it, usually BFRBs are going to be nail biting, which everybody knows about, skin picking, which not everybody knows about. It could also be cuticle picking, but also hair pulling, as well as cheek biting. And when they become a problem is when the habit becomes unstoppable and out of control. And the person who is doing the action is starting to feel a lot of distress internally, as well as you can get damage externally. So if you're a hair puller, you can start having bald spots. If you're a cheek biter, you can start having sores in your mouth. With nail biting, same thing. You can get down to the quick and really hurt. And that's really, it's like I said, it's the most common disorder that you'll never hear about.
That is so true. And it's interesting because even in your description, there are things that you're adding that I really wouldn't have even known are included, which I guess they seem obvious. But I mean, cheek biting is something I completely do. And that's an interesting thing, I think, for parents to hear, that it's not just, picking and pulling, but cheek biting or cuticle, down to the tip is a big issue. What about cracking your bones? Is that considered a BFRB or no?
Not that we've seen. Nose picking is. I think it has to be something that's focused on the body and very repetitive.
Okay.
Like the motion is repetitive too.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think I've never seen any literature about like knuckle cracking.
Or elbow cracking. I crack my elbow so much that like my joint hurts and I can't even open my arm, which is really weird. So I always wondered, is that considered a BFRB? Because it's damaging and it's so repetitive.
It is.
But who knows?
Maybe there just haven't been enough cases presented to doctors to know that it exists as like an issue. I'm serious, because that's the only way, right? Is by telling your doctor you have this, so that the number of use cases can be reported and the data is correct, so that doctors and researchers can know what to be studying.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I think it's an issue. It's a personal issue. So a lot of times in my practice, I see a huge correlation between picking and pulling behavior and anxiety and OCD. I just think the same part of the brain is activated, and I see just a huge overlap. But I also think there's a lot of confusion on that. I think a lot of times parents that I talk to will think there's that there's always a trauma or a stress related to it. And so I really wanted to dispel a lot of assumptions that parents make and also talk about how to help. So in general terms, what do you think are some maybe misperceptions or assumptions people make that are incorrect?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of what's causing a BFRB, it could be trauma, but it could just be hormonal change. It could be some like environmental change. I don't think it necessarily has to be some big issue that's like causing some change. I was just at this conference this weekend, and they were talking about how genetics are involved, and it's a genetic mutation, but life events can affect your genes, and hormonal changes can affect your genes. So it could be anything, and that's the problem, is because it's so different for everyone, and the onset is so different for everyone, the treatment has to be different for everyone.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet to even know what that treatment can be. Other misconceptions are that people are doing it to themselves, like it's a choice. Like I want to sit and pull out all of my eyebrows and eyelashes. But it's really that subconscious mind, that automatic brain that's making that decision for me. It's the same brain that's telling your heart to pump and your lungs to breathe in and out. Like you're not conscious of it. And I think that's a huge misconception, is that it's a choice, and because it's a choice, we're weird for doing it, and there's something wrong with us, and that's just false.
And that's a really good point, because I do hear a lot of people call it self-harm. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's incorrect. You know, it's really not a self-harming behavior. It's a compulsive behavior, but it's not a self-harming behavior.
Right.
So
yeah.
I wanted to go into both of your stories, because I am a huge storyteller. I feel like that's how people learn. On my podcast, pretty much in anything I ever do, I'm always, even in my practice, I'm always telling stories to help people learn. So I thought it would be great to hear, both of you had this experience, you're both struggling with it, and I think it'd be great to hear your own story about what it was like as a child growing up with this issue, and how it felt with the people around you, and how you coped with it. And either one can talk.
Well, Aneela, why don't you go first, because then we can also get into how I came to starting to work with you, because it did begin with you.
Okay. So I started pulling in my early teens, and I don't know exactly when, but I do remember like just starting to pull. And for me, I do believe that there were some traumas involved that kind of amplified that gene for me. One was we moved to a new neighborhood, and it was moving from like kind of like a working class neighborhood to a very like first class neighborhood, if you will. And it was not first class. So, and I was very much reminded of that every day. And then my dad got sick with cancer. So I think both of those things just led me to looking for a soothing mechanism. And I used to suck my thumb, and I used to be a hair twirler as well. So I think for me, those were like the precursors. But I also think it was environment. I was bullied a lot, and I'm Indian, and I had really bushy eyebrows. So getting affected, you know, everyone sort of noticing. At some point, you're like, I need to do something about it. And you start tweezing, and then the tweezing kind of goes awry because it's a little bit of this pleasurable experience in a way. I mean, there is a reward involved. There's like this sense of accomplishment when you're pulling and you get that one that you need to get. But it never stops at that one, which is the repetitiveness and the stronghold that the disorder has on you. And so I hid for, 20 plus years out of that shame that we were talking about before, that people think you're doing it to yourself, think you're weird. And I already had enough reasons that I was weird, that I didn't want other people to know about this. And it really led a lot of my decision making, and it fed a lot of negative self-speak. Like, you're not good enough, you're ugly, no one's going to like you, don't even bother trying out for the team. And so it made a lot of decisions for me. And so I hid. But now, not anymore, because now I understand it better, and now I'm in just a better place, and I'm hoping that by sharing my story, I can help other people get to a better place much faster.
Which I think is amazing, because I do feel like I've never talked to a kid who had heard about it or who wasn't embarrassed by it. Every single kid that has come into my practice, when we address the picking or pulling, they'll say, you mean other people do this? You mean like there's a name for it? And there's just this huge relief, because normally they start off with, well, I do something kind of weird, and I don't want to talk about it. It's really weird. And I think also for a lot of kids, they do stuff when they pull, so there's behaviors around it, as far as like eating the hair or saving the hair, or even like eating the blood. Like, I've heard lots of different things that are like part of the ritual of doing it has some behaviors that shame them, and they feel really embarrassed. And I think when you say, yep, heard that one too, or if you even ask, and then what do you do with the hair? Do you eat it or do you save it? And they're like, yes, I do. How do you know that? So I think sharing your story is amazing, because the more people know about this, like anything else, the less stigma is attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
So Ellen, what was your story growing up? And then we'll talk about, Aneela, like how you not only came out and shared your story, but you created an amazing thing that is helping people all over the world, and even my little one, deal with it, like an engineering phenomena. And we'll talk about that at the end, because she is special, not only because she's sharing her story, but because she developed an incredible thing. And we're going to talk about that at the end of the episode. But Ellen, I wanted to talk about your story as well.
Sure. So like Aneela, I started also when I was about 11. But I know exactly where I was, and I have no idea why I started, but I was in gym class and I was nerdy. I wore eyeglasses since I was 4 years old. I was standing in gym class. We were outside. No one wanted to pick me for the team. And for whatever reason, I just was, I guess, touching my hair because it felt good. And I pulled one hair right out of my head and zing, I was hooked. And I remember that I would pull a lot here, and I didn't even realize that I had bald spots in the back of my head. So I'm going to the hairdresser with my mom, and Fatima was cutting our hair, and she calls my mother over and she says, something's wrong with Ellen. She's got these bald spots right back here. So of course they're both staring at me, and I'm looking like, Ancino put gum in my hair, come up with a lie. And I had to pull it out. So no, everything's fine. And so throughout my childhood, I remember sitting in class and the bell would ring and I'd look down and there'd be hair, and going to bed, taking the hair and just trying to dispose of it behind the bedpost. And there was hair everywhere, but I did a really good job because I had a big thick head of hair of trying to cover it up. But then when I was in college, what was remarkable and what was wonderful is I took an abnormal psych class. And that's when I learned what trichotillomania was. Because when I grew up in the 70s, 80s, there wasn't an internet. So who knew what this was? I thought I was the only one. So it was really wonderful to find out that there was a name. But that didn't do anything. So I also went into treatment. I tried medication. I tried group. I tried therapy. I tried acupuncture, diet, every single thing I tried. Nothing really would work. Except for one thing. One thing did work for me, which was group therapy. But as soon as the group therapy ended, so did my success. And this kind of leads into how I met Aneela. So, I've been pulling for 40 years. And my kids did not know. I hid it from everybody. The only one who knew was my husband. And I swore him to secrecy. He has all these issues. We talk about it as a family, but you could not talk about mom's hair pulling. No. So nobody knew. And then after 3 hours of pulling one night, I got on the internet. And what's the new breakthroughs in trichotillomania? And I found what Aneela is going to talk about, which is this Keane bracelet. And so I decided to give it a go. And within probably days, I felt changes because I started to become aware. And I'll let Aneela talk a little bit more about the bracelet. And then I decided, oh my God, this is truly changing my life. I have to call them up. So I researched the company. There's 4 people there. They don't know who I am. But I called up and I said, I don't know if this is needed or wanted, but you have changed my life and I want to help others. And I'm on the East Coast and they're on the West Coast in Minneapolis. I said,
coast.
Let's work together. Can I help? And we decided we liked the interactions that we had. Let's give it a try. And so now here I am sitting with the 2 of you. And I am so thrilled and proud to be able to say, I'm a hair puller. And I've been able to control it to where I feel really good about myself and I'm not embarrassed to talk about it. And then to be able to sit here and share tips and tricks so that others can also feel the same.
Which is great. And let's talk about the bracelet since you brought it up. And I think I love the way you came to work with Aneela because it's like such an inspiring story. It's like she didn't just respond to a want ad and, just wanted to, get a job. It was like she sought you out, which I think is so cool because you want to have people who are passionate on your team, and come from the same place in their heart. So I think that's so awesome.
Thank you.
And And it's interesting how both of you kind of concealed it for a really long time.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to that. But let's talk about the bracelet, and then I want to come back to that because I think that parentally that's a really important thing that you both have in your story. So Aneela, can you talk about, so it's called the Keane Bracelet. Can you talk about how you got the idea? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but talk about maybe the inspiration a little bit more and how it works.
Yeah. So the Keane Bracelet, it's by our company name is Habitaware, so you can get it from the Habitaware website, habitaware.com. But how we came about with the idea was quite simply, like I said, I hid the disorder for 20 plus years. And it really wasn't until about 3 years ago that I finally shared my secret. And it was more so out of, not that I wanted to, but just that I was caught. Usually my method for hiding my hair pulling was makeup, like eyeliner on my eyebrows and eyeliner on my eyes so that you couldn't see that there was something missing. But one morning I just couldn't get that on in time, and my husband caught me. And this was right after my son's birth, so I think the hormones were actually affecting my hair pulling, so I was pulling a lot more, so it was very much more noticeable. And so he just turned around and looked at me, and I was a deer in headlights, and he just said, "Where are your eyebrows?" And I did not have an answer. I mean, I knew at that point that it was trichotillomania and it was hair pulling disorder, but I just couldn't really get out the words. So I think I was silent for what felt like 6 hours. And then finally I said, I have this disorder. And then we got to talking. And then over the next few weeks, he did his own research, started to kind of understand a little bit more. I think he was actually kind of hurt that I never told him and that I was hiding it from him. But for me, I just didn't want him to think that this was a flaw and that it made me unworthy of being married to and unworthy of his love. So I think it took him a couple of weeks to kind of get to that and understand that, but he was super supportive. And then one day we're just sitting on the couch watching TV and my hands are up playing and pulling, and he just gently grabs my hand and pulls it away. And in that moment, I just said, I wish I had something that notified me that wasn't you, because while I appreciated the gesture of that gentle, removal of the hand, it's also super annoying when someone tells you don't do it.
Right. You want to do it more.
You want to do it more. You just want to be like, and it's really hard. And I think that's something as parents, like everything that you tell a child, right? Don't do this, don't do that, don't eat candy. Like you just want to go run to the candy jar. Like, it's kind of how it is. So in that moment, we are technophiles and we knew it could be built, and we started figuring out how to do it. And we built a team.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the bracelet, do you want to talk a little bit about how the bracelet works?
Yeah. So what it does is you train the bracelet using an app, either iOS or Android. It's like a 1-minute process. You just train the bracelet for that specific motion that you do. So we ask the person for whatever that, that looking for skin imperfections, whether it's on the face or the back or the arms, or, scanning through your hair for that one little one that you need to get, that one that feels weird, or your eyebrows. And you train it for that motion. And then the bracelet is basically just looking for that mathematical calculation that motion's created. And when it gets a match, it sends a little vibration. And that vibration is like a little hug around your wrist, like a positive, gentle reminder saying, hey, your hands are not where you want them to be. And then after that, it's about replacing the behavior. So what we do is we're building that awareness, which is that very first step. When you go to a psychologist, a therapist, they're going to say, take this sheet of paper and write down every time you do the behavior and what you're thinking and where you are, and to try to understand what might be triggering it. But you can't write it down if you don't know what's happening, and you can't change it if you don't know what's happening. So we come in at that very first step of awareness, and then after that, the goal is to learn to replace the behavior. So we include a deep breathing light right here on the bracelet. So you can initiate that, and it's trying to teach you how to kind of shift from one of these hair pulling or skin picking soothing mechanisms to something more positive, so that over time that becomes your go-to, if that makes sense. So you're retraining your brain away from that negative behavior to something more positive, something more healthy, It could be grabbing a fidget cube or a squeezy ball, or maybe doing an exercise that you're working on with your therapist, or writing or art or knitting, anything to keep the hands busy or to reshift the energy in your body.
Yeah, it's anything that brings you joy, and truly what it's doing, and it's not, once you have the awareness, and then you are able to do other things like Aneela said. And then that builds other pathways in your brain. So if you think about it, we do the same things all the time. We get up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we drink our coffee, we have our oranges, whatever it is that we're doing. And we have certain pathways that we walk down in our brain. Same thing with how we talk, same thing with how we think about ourselves. And those don't change. But you can build other pathways in your brain. And so if you start to build other pathways and those start to grow and become green and lush, then you start walking down those pathways and you start walking less down the other pathways. And so what Keane's really done is it's brought awareness. And like when I first started wearing it, I had really didn't realize how often, I mean, I knew I was doing it. Awareness is slippery. You know you're doing something, but you have no idea how often you're doing it. So Keane helps you do that. But I also think it's important to let parents know this is only one little part of it, that you have to become aware. And we're not here telling you that you have to have Keane, because you can find awareness in other ways. This is just a very private and personal way to be reminded, so that, like Aneela said, she doesn't want her husband, and I didn't like my husband telling me, take your hands away from your hair. No one wants that. It's your own little private person, little whisper, whatever it is, saying hands down. And then it's what's next. So I was thinking before our time today on this podcast is, what can parents do? And just to kind of jump into that a little bit, the most important thing a parent can do, and I was talking to my kids about this, is don't say, stop it. Take your hands out of your mouth. Take your hands away from your head. Take your hands, whatever, because that's not going to work. That's the first thing parents have to like, whoop, and mum's the word. But what can parents do? And parents need to be supportive. And one of the things I was thinking about is people who have a BFRB typically will do the behavior in certain places. It could be in the car. It could be while you're studying. It could be while you're at your desk. It could be at night while you're getting ready for bed. So I was thinking, if you could get a basket of things that would bring your child joy, and you just put them strategically in those places. And those things could be, I like pencil erasers. I like the feel of them. So I have pencil erasers everywhere. But what is that going to be? Is it going to be a fidget toy? Is it going to be a piece of silky fabric? Is it going to be water bottles? Is it going to be chewing gum? Fill it with all of those things, and fill it with a mirror, right? So you can be aware. So maybe what you do, and this is not a mirror, this is my bullet journal, but imagine this is a mirror. If the mirror is right here, and I'm working on my computer, and I kind of get a glimpse of myself doing this, I become aware and I can put my hands down.
I like that.
I think having a mirror might be a really good tool for people who are pulling and picking, and they have their hands in their mouth. Because if you see yourself, you're going to put it down. Without mirrors, we don't see ourselves. So that could be another awareness tool in addition to, or something like this. Now, when you're at school, that's a different story. You probably can't have a mirror with you. And when you're at school, you might not be able to have a basket, but maybe in your pencil case, it's filled with whatever brings you joy.
Yeah. And you have some really great ideas. I love the mirror idea, because I think, if you see your reflection and you see your hands, I think it's so automatic that a lot of times people are completely unaware. And so just that feedback, that visual feedback is awesome. And there are a lot of things that kids can take to school. In my office, I buy kids a lot of stuff. Like I buy things that go on top of their pencils. And I'll leave a link below in the podcast and the YouTube video for like just different fidget stuff. But like I actually just this week ordered Dr. Seuss pencils, and they have like crazy hair. But for a lot of kids, they just like to have that sensory input, or rings that purposely move,
Right.
So there's something that you can do, or bracelets that you can pick at. Like there's those like fuzzy kind of bracelets that you can pull at. So I think it is just finding or even mermaid bracelets. I have a couple of kids with mermaid bracelets, which are those, those pillows, those sequence pillows that change when you go up and down. They make slappy bracelets with them. So you can get like 13 on Amazon. So I just buy a pack, and then it's something else that kids can push back and forth. But I think it's just tapping into what works for your kids and giving them a replacement behavior, which I think is good. The thing that I like about Keane too is kids won't track. They're not going to necessarily track their behaviors. And so Keane has kind of a button that every time a child does it, they can press it, and then the parent can have the app and they can be tracking it. And so a lot of times in the past, in my practice, I would say, this was probably terrible advice, but I would say, take a picture in the beginning of the week, and then at the end of the week, we'll take a picture. And if there's been some growth, like hair growth or no damage, they'll earn something, as like just an added incentive. Mm-hmm. But I like the ownership and the independence of tracking it themselves, and then making a fun game and incentivizing it and saying, if your number goes down, then you can earn something. And I think giving them that independence to do that would be cool. And the other thing about Keane that I'm not sure if it was clear when you were talking about it is that it has a light that you can kind of breathe with. And kids don't know how to breathe in the way that we try to train them. They don't even like breathing. And so I think every kid I ever try to breathe is like, what? Even this morning with my 6-year-old, I was trying to get her to breathe because she was feeling nauseous going to school because we deal with anxiety. And I'm like, breathe in, hold for 2, breathe out, and she was just like.
A really good way to explain deep breathing to kids. When you breathe in, picture like the most delicious New York style pizza, and like you're smelling it, and then when you breathe out, you're at your birthday and the candles are there and your family and friends are around and you're blowing out the candle. So you're associating 2 like cool positive images as well.
That's nice.
And doing the deep breathing without like the counting and stuff, which even I'm just like, I just do pizza and birthday cake. And
I like that. I've heard birthday cake. I like the pizza inhale. That's a good like supplement.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, I think is important with parents is, in addition to don't say, don't stop, is don't praise the progress, meaning the growth, because you can pull it out. It's really praising the system that you have in place that it will help you with pulling or picking less. Because the truth is, we have these disorders, and to try to strive to be 100% pull free is impossible, and it's not necessary. You want to pull and pick less, but for me, I'm about a good 90-95%, and I'm really super psyched about that, and I'm okay that I'm not 100%. And I don't beat myself up if I pull one. I don't. And I think with parents, what's really hard is it's so visual. Your kid could go to school with eyebrows and come home with half an eyebrow, and your eyes are really wide, and the kid sees that your eyes are really wide and then feels that they're disappointing you.
It's so hard.
Themselves. So, and this is really, really hard for parents, but if parents could really more compliment and encourage the process versus the growth that's happening.
So that's a good point. So Ellen, I wonder if you guys can elaborate on that, because as a parent to a child who's picking right now, so it's everywhere. So I pick, I treat people who pick, and I have a kid who picks. So it's everywhere. Her picking, so I have two out of my 3 kids do some sort of picking or pulling. So my 14-year-old pulls her eyebrows. She was easy. We had a talk about it. I said, this is a thing. She said, this is a thing? I said, yeah, this is a thing. There's a name for it. It's trichotillomania, because you have anxiety. It runs in our family. You're prone to this genetically, and this is what it is. And that was enough for her to say, okay. And she got it under control. There was like really no more conversation. I think I saw it twice, and I just said, are you tweezing or are you, pulling? Because she pulls with her hands. And she said, I'm working on it, Mom. And that was it. And she's had no problems. Come little Miss 6, 2 years later, And she has taken it to another level. She is creating scabs on her forehead, like open wounds that make me queasy. And we have talked about it as well, but I am doing everything wrong because I see her and I want to, one, it makes me nauseous because I've seen her physically hurt herself. It's looking like it's going to get infected. And so it is so hard to say, stop, or, hey, you're picking again. And like, it takes every bone in my body to have some restraint and not say that. And so what should parents do? Because I totally get that. If you see your child has like no eyebrows or has an open wound, as a parent, how do we one, not say anything and feel good about it, feel like we're doing something that's actually the right thing to do? And two, how do we reinforce the progress like you're saying?
Yeah, that's really, really hard. And my daughter bites her nails and I know better. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Get your hands out of your mouth. I mean, we all do it. So we also, as parents, need to cut ourselves some slack. And so what I think some of it is being prepared with, so if you have the basket of things that maybe if you're seeing your daughter doing this, that you hand her something else, because she can't pick if she's touching something, right? So maybe you're trying to do a different behavior. So you hand her something to play with versus so that she's not doing this. Aneela, what do you think? Do you have any initial?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Just divert attention away from it or start talking about something else. Like I see my son playing with his eyebrows and I don't know if he's learned it from me or if he's, if it's in him, right? And the only time I see it is at bedtime when we're like all cuddled up and I'm holding my baby and putting him to sleep and I'm sitting in bed with my older one and I just ask for his hand. I just like grab his hand and just play with him. I just want to hold your hand right now. It's bedtime. Let's say our prayers. So for me, like that's what I'm trying to do. But if I would see it, I haven't yet, but if I see it during the day, then I will just try to say, hey, let's go do an activity. Let's go, let's change the environment. Let's go do something else. Let's go outside and play. That would be what I would try to focus on. And it's interesting, Ellen, what you said about focusing on like that journey on the effort, right? It's the thing. It's Carol Dweck's growth mindset, right? You don't praise the A+, you praise the effort that was put into the A+. Oh, you must have studied really hard. Oh, you must be really working on your deep breathing. So to kind of praise the progress or praise the process rather than the result. And I think in doing that is planting that little, changing the voice in your child's head a little bit. Like when they catch themselves, then they will say, oh, mom was really proud of me when I was doing deep breathing. Let me go do that. Like they will remember that, right? Instead of and then it'll hopefully just sort of domino effect that you're focusing on what they're doing right and they will continue to do what they're doing right versus if you keep focusing on what they're doing wrong, that's all they're hearing, right? Don't pull your hair out. We were talking about earlier, kids see in words. There's no visual for don't. So they hear pull your hair out and that's what they keep hearing. That's what they're going to keep doing. But if you say, hey, grab your squeezy ball, or hey, come sit with me and do a deep breathing exercise. I'm feeling a little tense too right now. Let's sit together and do one. I think if you can join your child on the journey, and hugs are great too. Like if you just don't know what to say, just go over and hug your kid and say, I love you.
I love that. It seems so obvious. Like we do that.
It's really hard in the moment, right? In the moment, you just want to be like, hey, get your hands out of your hair. Right. But you have to, it's all about your own awareness too. Like you have to kind of take that step back, take your own deep breath, and then go over and calmly assess and, get them out of that situation.
And
it does.
Catch them doing something right. So if you see your daughter and she's playing with her, whatever it is, versus doing this, you say, hey, I noticed that you were doing blah, blah, blah. And so that catching them doing something right. And sometimes I write down that I want to catch each of my family member doing something right. I don't always do that. Right? So that you can start to get those things. You know, I just said to my daughter the other day, hey, I noticed you emptied the dishwasher without even being asked. That was really great. Thank you. You know, it's just catching them doing something right. And if you can catch them doing things right with playing with things as well as just in general, right? Because we're all going to have setbacks and things are going to happen. And your kid might come to you crying because, look, I have one eyebrow now. And then in tears, I'm never going to be able to stop. So then the other tool I would suggest is use the word yet. You're not able to stop yet. Let's think about a time where you were able to stop yourself. What were those things that you did? How can we get more of those into your life right now? So it's a journey, and it will always be a journey.
Yeah.
And if you can focus and start to build those pathways and focus on the things that bring you joy and that you're doing right, we all do things that are wrong. But let's focus on the things that we do right, and we learn from the things we do wrong. And it's not easy. And then when we yell at our kids, we have to forgive ourselves too.
And we have
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Say sorry too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I yell at my kid, and then I say, I'm sorry I did that. That was not the right way to handle that situation. And so you're teaching them too how to be and how you have to lead. So everyone is doing something wrong in life, right? So you have to start noticing what you're doing wrong, show them that you're trying to change, show them that it's hard and it's not, there's no magic bullets out there, but if you can show them how to do it, they can take that and they can kind of harness it too. And that energy changes in your house too, right? Like you thank your daughter for doing the dishes, she'll thank her sister for, folding the laundry for her, and it creates like a different vibe in the house.
Yeah.
It does. And I think that's so good to bring it all back, because I mean, I get all that, and I think, but then when you throw in some really scary behavior, it's so hard to remember all these things that you're bringing up that you really need to approach it in the exact same way, being uplifting, being empowering, highlighting good, focusing on the positive. Like these are all things that we all try to do in our houses for everything else. But I think when we see picking and pulling, it goes out the window, and it shouldn't, because it's just as effective for that, which is good to bring up.
Yeah. I think people just think it's so foreign, the behavior, right? It just doesn't make any sense to a lot of people, even the people doing it, that it's so foreign that we don't know how to handle it. But the answers are in front of us. It's very similar. And for me, it's becoming more not about the disorders, but just about learning to be a good human. It's about compassion. It's about, and if you can learn these skills at these young ages, if kids can learn deep breathing at 5 and 6 years old, then when they're 35 and, running tech companies that are super stressful, they're going to be in better positions to handle it.
Exactly. I also think it's good to educate kids on what it is. And I got this book, Bad Habits Take Hold. Have you ever seen this?
Oh yeah, I have.
This is a great book. So I was talking about my daughter, and on my private Facebook group, it's not even for me, it's to support other people. And somebody was talking about one of their kids was pulling, and another therapist on there said, well, you should read Bad Habits by Dawn Huebner. And I was like, she has a book on this? Mm-hmm. So this was great, because I read this, I'm starting to read it with my 6-year-old, and it's really like it's normalizing it because it's in a book. Mm-hmm. And 2, she's starting to come up with her own coping mechanisms. So she, lately, because it talks about blocking as one of the things that you should do. And so lately she's been wanting to wear her hair kind of long over her head, and I'll see her kind of flattening her hair out. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm blocking, Mom. So when I feel like I want to pick, I'm smoothing my hair out and it feels better.
Awesome.
And I never taught her that. She came up with that herself through the book. So I think for parents, what I'm getting from you guys is kind of, it's not our battle. And I always say that about OCD and anxiety, but it's so true with this too. It's not our battle. So we have to educate our kids and then just empower them and highlight the good that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. One thing I did want to bring up, we talked about at the beginning, is the difference between a BFRB and OCD. And one of the things I think parents need to know, which is so important, is BFRBs are soothing. OCD is not soothing. Kids who have OCD who are washing their hands, they don't want to wash their hands. And it's not soothing when their hands are getting that they have to do this all the time, or they have to hit the same step every day. Where with well, we don't want to pull and we don't want to pick, it feels good. I don't think OCD, and Natasha, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think OCD feels good.
No, and I think that's the hard part is the OCD compulsions don't feel good, but the brain, you know, a child that has OCD is more likely to have a BFRB and use that as a coping mechanism.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, now I have to tap or I have to wash and I'm stressed and this feels really good.
Right.
And so, and my brain is more activated to do that. And so now I'm more likely to use that as a coping mechanism. And so that's the tricky part is giving them a different coping mechanism.
Right. And I think it's important that you said that so parents know the difference too.
Yeah.
Because they are, while a lot of things are commingled and we do a lot of the same things, they are two different beasts.
They're very different. And I think the treatment for it is completely different. Yeah. And I think it is important for parents to hear. And I do think a lot of times parents will say to me, you know, Natasha, I pull my hair out just to see what it feels like, and it does not feel good to me. And so I don't understand it. And I do feel like that's where the physiological aspect comes in, because I need smooth skin. So I I roam my skin to find the bump so I can smooth it out, and then I feel satisfied. If I pull my eyebrow out, that hurts, and I don't get that reward. It's not pleasurable for me. And so I explain to parents, we're wired all differently. You probably don't care if you have a bump on your neck, but to me, that would drive me nuts. You know, but to your child, when they pull out their hair, there is some reward, some satisfaction they're getting. And so even if you don't understand it as a parent, it's still happening to your child. Like, I don't get the skin picking where you're creating scabs, but it's satisfying to my daughter.
Yeah, it's that sense of accomplishment that you're getting it, right? You're getting it, bugging the crap out of you.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting word, and I think important for parents. So they say, I don't get it because I don't feel joy out of it. Well, it's also, some people like Diet Pepper and some people hate Diet Pepper, right? Mm-hmm. Like my daughters love Diet Pepper. I'm like, oh, it tastes disgusting. Why would you like that? Well, they like it. So everybody is different, and you have to respect that. And I think you're educating yourself is so important.
Yeah.
With parents, it's, you know, we want our kids to be happy, and we want them to, we don't want them to be made fun of. We want them to be happy. We don't want them to feel pain. And seeing these things that they're going through, physically seeing the sores or the hair missing is really hard for parents, or the hands in the mouth. Yeah. It's really hard for us. But what you said, Natasha, is so important. It isn't our journey. It's their journey. We can only be there with them to give them the supplies that they need, because they're kids. Yeah. So, and to cheer them on in the proper way. But we can't control them, and we can't make it stop. And parents have to accept that.
And that is a hard thing. It's a hard thing for them to accept. And I totally get it, because it's scary to accept something like that.
Yeah. And you know, maybe you don't accept it, but you don't judge. I'm not saying you. I'm saying
it
just came to me that, you know, it maybe it's one of those things that it's hard for us to accept, but we know that we need to accept, so we fake it till we make it.
Yeah.
Smile and nod when our kid walks in without eyebrows, because you don't want to have those wide eyes open and then they know, oh crap, I did it again. My mom's going to be mad at me.
And it's not about you and your child. It's not about that. And this is what I say for anxiety and OCD as well. It's not about you and your child and the dynamic between you and them, and that you're disappointed when they do this, or they should feel like they have upset you. It's not about you. It's about them. And I think we can inadvertently make it about us when we look disappointed, or we look shocked, or we look stressed, or we're constantly working harder at this issue than they are. Then it becomes well, I don't want to upset my mom, or I don't want to disappoint my mom. And you don't want that in your relationship. That's not good.
Right.
That's part of the reason I hid it. Like, I didn't want to upset them. She was already going through so much with my father being sick. Like, she didn't need another thing. But I don't know. I don't know where I would be. Like, I'm at a point where I'm at peace with it all, you know? Like, it was my journey, and it got me. It may have been hell back then, but, you know, I mean, I'm good now, and I'm helping others, so I'm in a good place, and I don't even want to think about what would have happened if she did know and she was involved, and I would have been on a different path, you know? And I may not have gotten to the point where I was 30 plus years old and my husband caught me with eyebrows and without eyebrows, and, you know, then this wouldn't exist. So everything is happening for a reason. And I think people need to just understand that, even for their own kids, and just check the whole, my kid is a reflection of me, and if my kid is a reflection of my parenting, at the door, you know? Like, my kid is my kid, and I'm going to mess them up. I'm not going to mess them up. Like, just leave that. Like, let it go, because they're going to go on their own journey, and all you can do is be those footsteps next to them. Yeah. When they need you. And when they don't need you, you got to just say, okay.
And I think that's a good point, because this is not a parenting problem. And a lot of parents will say that to me. What have I done that would make my child want to rip their hair out of their skull? Mm-hmm. And I think hopefully this is educating some people to realize this has nothing to do with your parenting. Mm-hmm. You know, there are parenting approaches to help this that I'm definitely learning today, that are totally counterintuitive, but it's not about, you don't cause this. Parents don't cause this in their kids.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, they don't.
And I think the bad habits take hold. They do come up with a lot of good ideas. And what I'm noticing, because when my daughter started first picking, I lathered her with Band-Aids. I just popped those little Band-Aids on her forehead, and I was like, we're done. This is over. And what I was doing was I was taking her journey away from her. And I was disempowering her, because I was saying, I'm going to control your little body. I'm going to put barriers on, and you're not going to do this anymore. And instead of engaging with her and saying, how do you want to maybe block this? What would help you not do this? I just took control. And now she's coming up with her own ideas. Mom, I like when I put my hair down and I can't get to it. That's working a lot better than the Band-Aids, because she would just find a spot that wasn't covered, and there's not a big enough Band-Aid to cover that forehead. I tried. But she would find another spot. But now, no Band-Aids, but her idea of blocking it with her hair, and her scabs are healing along with the Keane. She's wearing the Keane, she's getting noticed, and she's coming up with her own ideas. And all I do is say, do you want to wear your Keane today? We call it her love bug. Do you want to wear your love bug today? And she said, yep, put it on, Mom. And that's the only role I have in it.
And one thing that would be great too is, this is perfect to talk about the praising of the journey. I noticed you were wearing your love bug today. That's really great. I noticed that you came up with an idea for your hair. I think that's really marvelous. Whatever it might be, you're encouraging her and catching her where she's come up with ideas. And they're good ideas, and you're letting her know that you noticed her good idea.
Yeah,
that's a win for you.
Yeah. And it has to be their choice. There's, you strapping the bracelet onto her wrist every morning without her, it's not going to work. It has to be their choice. They have to be ready to change, whether it's their own inner desire to change or external, I'm getting bullied and I want to stop this. However that desire is manifesting, as long as they are ready to change, this will work, and other tactics are going to work, because then they're ready to take in that information and to make different choices and to experiment and see what's going to work for them. Band-Aids didn't work for your daughter, but, covering it with her hair, brilliant, right? And she doesn't need to go find the Band-Aid. She's got her toolkit right there, right with her, which is great. Which is also why I love deep breathing, because then you don't need always the basket of stuff. Like, you may be at a friend's house, and what are you going to do if you can't find something sensory, right? So if you can build your toolkit many things. It's not all about, Keane is not a magic bullet. It's part of that toolkit, and deep breathing is part of that toolkit. Sometimes sometimes you're going to have urges where deep breathing is not going to help, but that squeezy ball or that, Dr. Seuss fidget hair top for the pencil is going to be perfect because you need that sensory moment in that moment. So you have to just keep experimenting to see. And I think you said earlier, educate, empower, highlight the good. Mm-hmm. That's all you need to be a good parent in general.
Yeah.
And if you apply it to BFRBs, then your kid's going to be, in a good place at home to be able to take control.
Yeah. And I think some parents just need to hear that it's okay to let your child have their own journey in this. You're not being a bad parent by just highlighting the progress they're making and not highlighting when they're pulling. I think some parents intuitively feel like then they're being a bad parent. And I think hopefully this is a good message to those parents to say, you're doing all the right things by just praising, being empowering, and educating, and letting them come up with their own plan on how to do it.
Yeah. And one other thing that came to mind too is sometimes people are not ready. And I've been there where, I'm just going to do this one spot, and this is going to be my spot, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to love it, because it's like eating. If I can eat all the cookies I want and not get fat, I'm going to eat them. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to pull a certain amount and be able to live with it. And I was okay with that. And parents are going to find that there's going to be kids that do not want to give it up. They don't care. And that parent cares. But the kid doesn't care. So that parent's going to have to walk away. They're going to have to allow the child to do what they're doing and walk away. And that's going to be really, 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 really hard.
It is. It's going to be really hard. You can still read, you can still educate, but then at the end of the day, it's going to be your child's choice.
Yeah. And, sometimes there's people who have, trichotillomania, and they've decided, you know what, I'm just going to shave my head. They might want to do that. And I'm going to pull, and I don't care. And then there's others who do want to stop. And you can't convince anybody of anything. It has to come from within. And the parent just needs to be there to support as best they can, and then find their own support. So if they're in a place where they're having difficulty, then there's support groups out there for parents. You can find them on Facebook. Parents that do not have a BFRB, but they need support because their child does. There's probably there could be therapy groups, but I'm also thinking about support groups. Mm-hmm. For parents of kids who have these issues.
What do you think is the best website for parents to go to for resources?
Oh, BFRB.org, without a doubt. So TLC, Foundation for BFRBs, for Body Focused Repetitive Behaviors. Their website is BFRB.org. They're the only nonprofit in the U.S. that's dedicated to these issues. There's one in Canada as well. It's not related, but there's one in Canada, and there's another specifically to skin picking called the Picking Me Foundation, which was just recently started, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, by a skin picker. She's got an incredible story as well. Her name's Lauren, and just a heart of gold, and her goal is awareness, to get people understanding of what these things are, to try to normalize the behavior so that, again, there's more compassion. And BFRB.org, hands down, has the resources for parents.
Okay.
Two of the moms in the BFRB.org community, members, they run a Facebook group called Tricky Picky Parenting.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. So if any parents out there do need that support that Ellen's talking about, I highly recommend it. That's where you go to, complain, not to your kids, but that's where you go to kind of get your stuff out, right? Like we thought we were doing good, but little Susie came home with no eyebrow today. What do I do? And that's where you can go to kind of get the support that you need so that you can be the best parent, so that you can focus your energy on educating, empowering, and highlighting the good for your child, and all those other emotions that you're dealing with, you can deal with them with other parents.
Yeah. And I think that's really good to feel like you're not alone. So
Yeah.
I'll put a link to the website, bfrb.org, and then you can find the Facebook group. I'll see if I can find the Facebook group link and maybe put it in the notes too, so that parents don't have to kind of fish around. Because I think that would be huge to feel like you're not in it alone. And then also, if you're listening to this on the podcast and you want to see what the Keane bracelet looks like, you can go and watch this on YouTube. The whole interview will be up on YouTube at youtube.com/C/anxious toddler78. And you can also go to the website. Is it habitaware.com?
Yep, habitaware.com.
Habitaware.com. And I'll put a link so that anyone who's just like, they can just click it and they can head over in that direction too, because Keane is a unique tool that I just haven't seen in any other area that is super helpful.
Yeah. And we also have blogs that we're doing as well, which I find are really helpful for people. And so parents might want to, when they go to Habitaware, also look at our blog, because we tell different stories and have different tips every Wednesday.
Cool. Well, that's definitely helpful. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been so informative.
It's been so fun. Thank you so much.
It's been very fun. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Thanks.